So today, guys, we're going to be speaking from Worldline and online payments platform. The topic of today will be how UK retailers can succeed using online marketplaces. So before we start, a little bit of introduction. My name is Haroon Mohammed. I'm a senior commercial manager part of Worldline in the UK. Been around payments for 10 years, been with Worldline for 6 years. So quite well versed with payments and how the ecosystem has evolved. And I'd like to pass it on to Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Lavington, Commercial Director of Online Payment Platform Limited UK. We are a laser-focused marketplace PSP, essentially, massive in Europe, and we're just bringing it to the UK. And we can have the first round of applause because we finally got permissions from the FCA yesterday.
Fantastic news. So, I'm not sure if you guys have all heard of Worldline. If you have heard of Worldline, can anyone put the hands in there? 1, 2, 3. Well, I thought it'd only be one, so that's good, it's 3.
It'll be more than me.
So, if you don't know about Worldline, you might have heard a company called Ingenico previously. Worldline's grew through mergers and acquisitions. We're actually a public listed company, part of the French Stock Exchange. We got 50 years of experience, so whether that's you guys tapping in the morning for your TFL, whether that's you going to Tesco's, Asda, Sainsbury's and paying on the terminals, whether that's you guys going online, Worldline is a part of your everyday journey. And we're a proud payment service provider, 1 in Europe, 4th around the world. And OPP also is a part of us.
Yeah, since January last year, Worldline bought 40% stake in OPP because they needed a marketplace solution, which is what we are. We've been operating in Europe for about 13 years, over which time we've built up 200 plus platforms, 20 million plus merchants, and we're currently processing billions every year.
So to give you a bit of spectrum, we're around 50 countries, 18,000 staff. So you can tell I probably only know about 10 of those people working in our company, but we are a big company in many countries. What we're going to be talking about today. So we want to talk to you guys about cross-border landscape, what's happening, what's evolving in the market, what kind of opportunities there are, what are the pros and cons of cross-border commerce. Is it still alive? Did Brexit affect that? Did it not affect that? Most importantly, how do you actually choose which is the right marketplace for your brand? There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of products out there. Hopefully we can give you some indication to help you navigate some of those challenges. And also, expansion comes with a cost. What are the true costs? We'll be looking a little bit into that. And also, if you are looking to cross-border expansion, we'll look at how to prepare your business, what are some of the challenges you may face. That leads me to show you a bit about the cross-border landscape. I appreciate it's a busy slide, but it's quite an important one. It shows you what is the percentage of e-commerce around Europe. E-commerce transactions are around accounts for 744 billion. There's opportunity of 750 million people, 23 million businesses, 53% are local, a lot more are cross-border. And what does this graph actually show? This shows out of the 744 billion, 18% actually is cross-border transactions that happen, which accounts for 140 billion. Where do those transactions typically happen? Such as clothing, electronics, sports. And then you kind of ask, well, how many of those customers are actually nationals? Domestic people. 53% of those customers around shopping online are national and domestic, but 21% are actually cross-border. So 21% out of 53 shows you a large proportion of actually people are looking to go look at brands which are abroad, around Europe, and we'll deep dive on why people are looking to do that. So, what's important to see is what are the changing factors. How have consumer behaviors changed over time? This graph shows you a percentage category of what matters the most. As you can quite see, due to economical changes, there is a focus key on lower prices. 59% of customers look for lower prices. What is also interesting to see is not always about price, it's about product. Now, we all know, well, we hope we all know, Belgian chocolate is one of the best in the world, right? So if you have a nice taste for chocolate and you want to give a present to someone for an occasion, or you might just want it yourself, you know Belgium has the best chocolate, so you'll go cross-border and get the chocolate which is made in Belgium rather than the UK, for example. So sometimes if the product's not available or the products that you want, it's a key indication of why retailers look for brands across the board. There's a interesting statistic of a saying, buy cheap, you buy twice. Some consumers are now shifting the pattern where lower prices are not so important, but quality is important. So the price may be a bit higher, but the quality is more enduring. And this shows an interesting shift to see how the dynamics are. And what's also important to see, 38% want to see a better selection of goods and services. So it's really important to have a diversity of services when you are presenting to differentiate yourself from the market. So that leads us to, well, that's all great, but what are the actual pros and what are the cons? And here you can see on the left side some of the pros we have, on the right side some of the cons, and I want to talk to you a bit more about it. Branding and customer experience has become a part of our world. If you walk into Starbucks, you're encouraged to download the app to have rewards. If you walk into Costa, for example, it's the same thing. Now, more and more, you see tailored responses, tailored email campaigns, tailored products suited to your searches, your needs. So what are the pros of being traditional versus being in the marketplace? Well, profit margins. Naturally, if you sell direct to consumer, you have your own brand, you market your own brand, the cost of product and margin is higher than using a marketplace, which will, of course, deepen the margins that you have. And the flexibility. What's the flexibility in the product offering? Where is your product offering given on what kind of marketplaces? Are you just doing products on your website? Are you using any marketplaces? Or do you want to have that exposure? Why don't you have that exposure? What's the weighing of margin versus visibility in that sense? And also direct customer relationships. Having your own brand, you can have direct relationships with your customers, whereas being on a marketplace, you don't necessarily have that direct relationship with the customer. You don't necessarily see that funnel of journey. So they're the traditional methods. Then cross-border comes with challenges. We all know about Brexit. Logistics, shipping costs have all increased. So if you do want to go cross-border, what are the costs involved in this? Currency payment challenges. The market has thoroughly changed. From an FCA regulation point of view, now to take payments in the UK, you have to have a UK FCA license with a payment service provider. Previously, this wasn't the case. You could be a European company and service UK clients. So now, due to the Brexit challenges, you have to have an EU entity to service clients in the EU to save domestic costs, and the same with UK. So there's a shift in entities, shift in people on the ground, a shift on how logistics and operations happen. Regulatory compliance and tariffs. How do you manage that? Culture. Culture is very different in very different markets, i.e., in the UK, we're probably all familiar with Apple Pay, Google Pay, Visa, debit, but then you head over to the Netherlands, they use bank transfer, a payment method called Ideal. Just because we do what we do in the UK doesn't necessarily mean everyone else does in Europe. So it's important to have the right payment methods, and not just for the right payment methods, the right languages, the right currency. And this is all important topics to have. So how to market to international customers. So as you can see over here, there's various percentages, and you can see it varies across different sectors. In the UK, we are more discount focused. We want more personalization. As you can see, 78% of us, if we have personalized offers and discounts, we're more willing to buy a product from our retailers. If we have more general coupons and discounts, that's also the case. Mobile is quite important to us. Well, naturally, everyone probably has an iPhone or Samsung or some sort of Android, so it's very important. But you can see how the shifts in patterns actually vary, where in Belgium, the percentage is actually 50% versus 78%. So it's very interesting to see what the priorities are and how these lies. Personalization, it varies between different generations. Gen Z, millennials work very differently. Having email campaigns, millennials are more likely to purchase via more email-tailored campaigns, whereas Gen Z, it differs, and boomers differs. Boomers are more influenced by influence and social media campaigns. So you can see the various percentages. And to put this into perspective, 61% of millennials will purchase via certain social media ads. But the same statistics is 14% on boomers. So you can see one size does not fit all. Steve, over to you.
Thanks, mate. Okay. Before we start on this, I want to talk to you a little bit about the merchant's perspective of using e-commerce, using marketplaces, or using both, effectively. But some of the challenges that you're going to face, whichever way you go, is that since Brexit, things have got harder. Hands up if you voted for it. Yeah, no one's going to admit to that. You're going to face increased tariffs and duties. Always. But cross-border returns, this is always an interesting one. Is it worth getting it back if you've shipped it from the UK to Spain? Is it worth it? Does it owe you too much money once you got it back? Are you going to be able to resell it when you got it back? Who knows? So thinking about these kind of issues in advance are going to help you construct your strategy. EU VAT data privacy compliance. All of these rules are quite often across the EU, if you're working to them, and with individual compliance issues per country sometimes, and also when you start going further afield to Asia, Americas, etc. Again, you're going to face a lot of different compliance rules that you're going to have to work with. What's it going to cost you? Well, some things to think about. Traditional versus marketplaces. Really, it's down to your strategy as to which you're going to use or whether you're going to use both. But you're going to need to be seen. What I've always said to everybody I've spoken to about marketplaces is, if you're not seen, you can't be bought. It's as simple as that. You need to be seen. So using your advertising budget wisely, whether that be on the previous slide we've seen through TV, through radio, even if they're still a thing, but also through, you can actually advertise on marketplaces themselves without being listed on a marketplace. Logistics. It's going to cost you more to ship outside the UK, there's no doubt about that. If you're a web shop, you want to find a logistics partner that can service all the territories that you're going to want to go to, and for the right costs. It's all going to add up to that total purchase fee at the end. The price of your goods. If you're selling a shovel into the European market that can be bought locally cheaper, you're just digging a hole for yourself. It's that simple. So you've got to do your research about your product and figure out whether or not it's the right market for you. Personalization. Personalized goods have always been big. If you want to give the other half a purse or a wallet, you might want some initials stamped on it. Not so many suppliers all do this, but if you do it, it might make you stand out. Some other things like multilingual support. It's an interesting one. We at OPP, in our support department, currently have 16 languages supported. It's a big thing. If you don't understand Spanish and you're shipping to Spain, Google Translate will only get you so far. You really need to work on building some kind of support that's multilingual. Consumer law, as I've mentioned, this differs from territory to territory. You need to understand it before you open in that territory. It can have a massive effect and be a big surprise when you find out you're not compliant. So how to choose the right marketplace for your brand? Firstly, understand your own offering. Are you B2B, B2C? Is it a unique, generic, or specialized product? There are thousands and thousands of marketplaces throughout the world that all specialize in different things. And those are you need to seek out the correct one for your brand that has the right territory, the right payment methods installed. It's no good just relying on good old Visa and MasterCard worldwide. Local people in the Netherlands like to see Ideal. If you're in Belgium, they want to see Bank Contact. You need to understand these things before you approach that territory. Competitive pricing for your target market. We've mentioned the shovel story. You've got to know that by the time you've added all of the things that are costs to you onto your product, that you're still competitive in your target market. Market reach. When you're selecting marketplaces, some of them are fairly local. They might only operate in Germany. If that's your target market, it might be a good choice. Others operate Europe-wide, others operate worldwide. But look at what their customer base is. Who's buying from them? Are they going to be right for you? Promotional options. This is really interesting. Who's used Google AdWords to get up the rankings on Google? Anybody? A couple of you. A lot of marketplaces offer that same service to get you higher up the listings. You've probably seen it on eBay, maybe, where it comes up with a sponsored listing. You can do that. You can use these services. You can build a whole ad campaign around it. Payment methods, you want all of them, but what you don't want is a cluttered checkout. So if you can build a dynamic IP into your shopping cart, then essentially you understand where your customer is, providing they're not hiding behind a VPN, and you can show them the payment methods that will matter to them. And that's key. Logistics and taxes. We've kind of covered some of that. But with a marketplace, this is quite often handled for you. Okay? All of this is deducted as part of the fees that the marketplace will charge you for listing and selling. It's worth considering against that option against a standard web shop where you're responsible for it all. So I mentioned sponsored ads. Okay, there's some shovels on here. Back to the shovel story. These ads are from people like Screwfix and Toolstation, but this marketplace is Marktplaats in the Netherlands. It's not necessary that these companies list their tools on Marktplaats, but they are using their advertising services to reach the Marktplaats customers. One of the things, if you know Marktplaats, you'll realize how big their reach is through Europe. It's a massive C2C and B2C marketplace. This is your other option, sponsored listings. Gone with some DJ equipment here. What you want to be, if you can, is top of the rankings, always. It's going to cost money, but if you're top of the rankings, you're the first thing people see. People tend to buy when they're given choice, however. So once they've selected what they're looking for, they now have a list in front of them of choices. But yours is the first one to be shown. Does that make you the first choice? Potentially, if the pricing's right, the delivery schedule's right, etc. So we've looked at logistics, taxes, competition. Are you selling something that a local supplier can do cheaper? If you are, is it worth you opening your own company in that territory and moving the manufacturing of what you're trying to produce to a local offering. You reduce your logistics costs, you reduce your manufacturing costs possibly. Payment methods we have looked at, compliance and regulations we've looked at, but the return and refund policy, I do want to touch back on that. There is a consideration of how much something owes you if you decide to get it back. So how are you going to manage this? One of the ways of understanding returns is to have a mediation service. So when you ship something to a customer, if they're not 100% happy with it, they might approach the mediation service. Could be an automated one where they just say, look, it's a minor niggle with this particular product. All I want is 10% off. That can go to the seller who can agree that discount. After all, it's probably cheaper than refunding it and getting the product back. Marketing and local preferences. Haroon touched on that very nicely. It's important to understand each area of your market. I spoke to a gentleman earlier who's working through Europe and the USA, I think, and they've set up separate companies to actually approach each of these markets with their own web shops. I think it's a great idea. It's something I'm an advocate of because you have a number of benefits of doing that. Your manufacturing's local, your suppliers there are local. It's building that local economy, which is great. It's cheaper for you, potentially, and you're building your brand awareness in that market by doing it. So, thank you very much. Are there any questions? None? Gentleman over there.
Sorry.
There's a mic on its way to
my
you.
mic, please.
It's over the back. Thanks.
Hi, hello there. Yeah, you were talking about different marketplaces. You mentioned marketplaces. Obviously, Amazon and eBay are dominant, and we're currently on eBay across a couple of brands, and we're looking to get into Amazon. Where else? What other platforms, channels for Western distribution do you recommend?
It's going to depend. I need to know more about your product, your story.
Oh yes, so, we're a classic car parts distribution company.
Okay.
We've been going for 45 plus years, and we're B2B and B2C. So we have our own website, very successful. But alongside that, everywhere we want to be everywhere. In terms of that marketing approach. We want to be getting more into the USA, and we also want to make things a little bit more simple for our European customers. So we've put a lot of time and development into making sure we're cost competitive with our logistics, but we're still not there yet in Europe. There's still a big psychological barrier to the sort of 15-20% inflated prices that people are having to pay for duty and so on. But I am interested as to what platforms you think work for specialists, unique type offerings that are not in the creative industry, sort of hard car parts, for example.
I probably won't mention specific platforms, if that's okay, but I would start with this. I would actually start with the car auction platforms. Okay, see who's advertising on there. See what your competitor in that market is doing. Especially in the USA, there's a big classic car market. I know a friend of mine in the US is well into his classic cars. But I would start with that. I would start by looking at the auction platforms. So if it was reversed and you're coming to the UK, you want to look at Auto Trader.
Oh yeah, sorry, back in the room. So you're thinking like sort of display ads in those environs rather than...
It's a good start point. You can build up while you research specific B2B, B2C marketplaces for classic cars and classic car parts. They will be there.
I've looked at Hemmings in the USA, and obviously they predominate I've been looking at print marketing, and print marketing's died. We're just not getting the click rate from
No.
any print marketing that we're placing. So, good tips. Thanks very much.
No problem. Any other questions before we finish?
We are here, guys. We've got a stand straight down on the right. So if you do want to have a separate conversation with us, we're here all day, and you're welcome. We also have a behavior report of consumer behaviors. We did a study around 6,000 people across Europe, and we launched a free report that you can utilize to see what's happening in the European market. So if you do want a free copy, do let us know, and we can send you that via email. Thank you. If there's no other questions, we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.